has cerebral palsy, epilepsy, a gene mutation, and autism, but it does not let her slow her down. Yes, she is in some sort of therapy 5 days a week, so she is very, very busy and happy. And despite not being able to walk or speak, she walks on her knees, so she still can get around in typical 2-year-old as far as into everything. So she is the best.
Yes, it's so exciting to see her gain new skills each and every day. It's really rewarding as a parent.
Yeah, so when Eden was having a lot of seizures, even throughout the night, we were getting no sleep. And so we knew we were going to need a Cubby Bed, and that was denied by insurance. And so we tried fundraising on our own, which we got a little, but not enough. And so I posted something on Instagram, and it connected me to you guys through a friend, and we found out about Variety, and I had it tucked in the back of my head because we were going through a lot of medical stuff with Eden. And then one day I was like, crud, I need to reach out and apply. So reached out, applied, and then there was some miracle. I know this isn't typical, but we got her bed within a week. And so that was crazy. But since then, we have been able to have the best sleep.
Yes.
And Eden, part of her autism, she does some alone time. And it is a place for her to be alone and in a little nook. It has a sound machine, and so it's just her little haven inside of our house, which we love. And then recently got the Go Baby Go car, and when she first got it, she was didn't really know how to work it, but as of a couple months ago, she started honking. So around our neighborhood, she just honks at everyone. And so, yeah. And I think the other part that's important is a lot of it is other parents that don't have children with disability wanting to get involved, but it's super important for our child with disabilities to be around children who are more neurotypical, because that is also how they learn. And so just because it looks different, it really helps our kiddos, and I promise it will make your kiddos better people. So that is something that I say is so important. So inclusion can really be with the whole family. It needs to be with the whole family. Something I tell people is Eden not being able to speak yet is hard. Eden not being able to walk yet is hard. But the hardest part of it all is that you are constantly having to advocate. You become a therapist, a doctor, I don't know, everything. And so the job is never over. And then I always encourage people to reach out to anyone with kids with disabilities, because not only is their daily care hard, but the mental load of also having to wear all of these hats is very hard. And so when I say all those things, I just like to add that Eden is the best, and we wouldn't change any of it. And I think a little story I would share that I tell people when they're oh, what is it like raising Eden? So great example, winter's here, you buy your kids the cutest hat, the cutest scarf, the cutest gloves, boots, and with Eden's sensory differences, she will not, she will allow a blanket, and that's it. And so I feel every time we're going into places when it's cold out, people look at you why does your kid not have a coat on? But it's stuff just as little as that, those little micro judgments that people place that you wouldn't even think of, those really build up. And so it's truly just something as small as winter time, which seems like a pretty normal thing, can give challenges to a family that has a disabled kiddo. And so that's just a small example of how just daily, normal, typical life can look different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So first, it's okay to give yourself 2 days to 2 years to mourn and grieve what things would look like. But something that I wish I would have done differently is I just knew immediately, okay, we have to advocate for Eden. We are questioning every doctor, we're questioning every therapist. And I really lost myself in that process and let go, and not to talk about mental health, but to talk about it. It does take a big strain on you, mentally, emotionally, physically. And so just like being cognizant of like, you have to make sure you are taking care of yourself also, which is extremely hard. But I try to remind myself, like, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And I wish I would have been, like, as hard as it was, more like deliberate with that in the beginning. And then I would say our other thing is just always trust your parental instincts. And if you were ever told, like, no, there is not a way, like they said Eden wasn't going to sit up, well, she's sitting trying to pull up and is pulling up and walking on her knees. And so if we would have just listened to that first doctor, her life would have looked so different, because we wouldn't have been trying to get her to do these things that she now can do, because we would have just lost hope. And so never take the first answer, keep pushing and take care of yourself, because your child needs you to be as healthy as possible as they can.
Yeah, and I think from a father's perspective, you know, you don't want to self-isolate yourself, because it can be tough at the beginning. You don't know what challenges you're going to face yet. You don't know what's going to happen, but you do need to realize that you should utilize your village that you have around you, family, friends, and definitely your spouse, and just keep an open line of communication to talk about things, because things will unravel every day that you find out something different about your child's disabilities, and you're trying to figure out the next steps moving forward. So it's important not to shut down and just to keep talking about it, because there are ways to figure out this journey, and you can definitely do it together and not by yourself.
Of course, I have all of my friends from like high school and college, but some of my closest friends now are like people that have children with disabilities or people that work in this space. And so you have to know that your village could shift, but don't give up. Still, like, keep pressing forward and find your new village. And yeah. So I always tell people a couple things. One, no mother of a medically complex child is going to turn down a Starbucks gift card. Okay, so like if you feel like you're wanting to give a gift and not sure what to give, yeah, lots of stock in those. But in all seriousness, is ask questions. Like, what is the hardest part is when people just assume the competence level of your child. And so I will say nothing feels worse. Like, I would rather someone ask a question that may or may not offend me because they just don't know this world yet than isolate themselves and not include us in things. And then the other thing is I tell people is like, always send the invite. Like, so if you have a family, you're like, oh, we want them to come to this, but they might not be able to because of their kid. There's been times we've got invited to things that like we knew we weren't going to be able to, but just the invitation alone like could have brought us to tears. And so there's so much to do. And then if you have kiddos, like teaching your children about other children with different disabilities, because the amount of conversations we have, like we were at Shawnee Mission Park and this kid came up and was like, why is she still swinging? Like, because she had been on the swing for a long time. It's one of the ones you laid flat. And we're like, oh, well, Eden has some disabilities that makes her different. And this is how we like get her regulated. And this is how she plays at the park. And I'll never forget, the kid looked at Richard and I and was like, oh, I have a disabled sister. And we were like, oh, and so it's like your kids are learning, like they're understanding. This kid was what, probably 6? Like, yeah. Your kid is never too young or old to teach them. And so, yeah, I would just say having that conversation with your family and being an advocate out for it in public. And if you ever see a family that like looks like they are having trouble, I know with like some kids on the autism spectrum, especially with Eden, sometimes like public meltdowns and stuff are okay. And like we would so much rather you come up and ask like, hey, can we help you? Instead of like just sit there and like kind of judge in silence. So I would say always asking questions. And yeah, even if the family can't do it, still inviting them to things because that's important. And that is how we bridge this gap. And one day I dream there's going to be a world where we don't have to do things like these to talk and educate. But right now we do, and it's important. And so that's what I would say.